Welcome to our first podcast on Chronicles of AI. We have Debanjana here, who is an amazing data scientist working with Walmart. So today we'll be talking about some of the interesting aspects of AI and not just about the algorithms, but trying to understand who are those real people behind the algorithms. What is their story? What are some of the challenges that they're faced working in the domain of data science? Are there any mismatches in terms of what academia trains data scientists for and what is expected out of them in the industry, and how did they overcome these challenges, right? And drive significant amount of impact for the enterprise, for the community, for the teams. So excited to start this podcast and with our very first session and our guest, our very own Debanjana. Debanjana, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Rojana. I'm so excited to be here. And it's called AI Chronicles Beyond Algorithms. So it's all about the people behind the code. So I'm super, super excited and very honored to be the first guest of the season.
Awesome. So let's jump right in. Can you tell us a little bit about your first encounter with AI and what sparked your interest? Take us back to your childhood. Is there any moment that sparked that interest? How did your AI or data science journey begin?
So if you think about it, my relationship with I feel like it's kind of an arranged marriage. So essentially, if you go back, right, AI has its origin in some of the educational disciplines, right? So say there's mathematics, there's statistics, computer science, some engineering sciences such as electrical. So I am a student of statistics. I think it's 15 years now that I've been a student of statistics. It was one of my specialties since school. I did my bachelor's in statistics, then I did my master's in mathematical statistics. And after that, I joined Walmart as a statistical analyst. And although it's called a statistical analyst, the work description is pretty much the same thing as what we do today. Of course, the levels are different, so there's a difference in the role, but nonetheless, it's the same discipline. So yeah, I mean, that is how I got to start working on AI, which is the same thing that I have been studying for such a long time. And of course, there's a very different flavor from academia to industry. I have been married to AI since, and I've never looked back. That's that.
That's interesting, and also because your background happens to be statistics, right? When I just look at this, how interesting and fascinating it is that the overall domain has evolved so much. So we have got
Yeah.
earlier, it was there was significant focus. We expected three different skill sets out of a data scientist, right? So we expected them to be strong in statistics, have a good domain knowledge, and have a decent programming skills. Now,
Hmm.
there's a lot more expected out of data scientists in terms of them having a very good understanding of the technology stack, being able to understand the implications of cloud compute
Hmm.
on the projects and deployments, especially if you're working for large organizations with petabytes and gigabytes of data. So it's really interesting in terms of how things have evolved. In that
Yeah.
context, what are some of the challenges that you have faced in your own journey of being a data scientist? Anything that's interesting from the different areas or domains that you worked across your entire career? I believe you worked across different geographies as well. Any interesting contrast between some of the challenges that you faced working in different parts and continents of the world?
Let's go back to the original question that you had as to the challenges in AI, and I'll maybe talk about the geography a little later. I feel the biggest challenge in AI, and that's always been the case, no matter what stage of AI we were in, is actually not machines, not compute, not models, but people. The way I see it is ever since I have been practicing AI, right, all the way from when I started as a statistical analyst to 8 years later, no matter what we do, it's always too advanced for business. So at one point, regression was advanced for business, then deep learning was advanced for business, then attention, and now agents, right? And as someone who wants to grow in the field as an architect, we live in that boundary of research versus adoption versus real world applications, right? So there's a part of me, like let's take the examples of agents today, or say LLMs per se, right? In many ways, LLMs are just the vessel or the mode of delivery, but the actual prediction is still being done by a traditional ML or a deep learning model, which is tried and tested, right? As would be the case with agentic architecture. But as we would see in most of the instances and most of the businesses are, they have their reservations about AI, and for good reason. Now, as someone in the crux of research versus application, it can sometimes be frustrating because you feel like, hey, this is tomorrow, this is guaranteed, this is going to scale, and maybe it's not perfect, but we have to give it a try. And it can be frustrating because you see the value, you see how, where it can fail and how you can fix it. But there are apprehensions, there are reservations. But at the same time, we need to understand, and I learned it the hard way, that my model or my AI product is only as good as the business use case that people are willing to solve with it, right? You can go all in on technical efficiency, but if there's no business buy-in, if nobody's actually using it, then it doesn't make sense for you to build that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And do you see any kind of a difference in terms of your deployments across different countries and different geographies? Has that been different, especially because you're talking about the people aspects, right? And then
Yeah,
different
yeah.
cultural norms across different geographies.
Well, I have worked in India and then I've worked in the US, right? And I believe in India. First of all, in India, I used to work in global tech, which had less exposure directly to business. Here, I'm embedded in a business team, so I get to work a lot more interdisciplinary. But say, even in India, most of the people who are in the realm of data science have, like, they place more importance on your education or how you are landing into that particular role. So these people are like me. They think in math. They are more comfortable with math. They are more comfortable with abstractization. But in US, I see it's a function of merit. It doesn't matter what your education is, what your upbringing in terms of mathematical thinking is. If you can get the job done, you're it,
Yeah.
right? And while that's fascinating, there's also a learning curve because people may not have the same opinion about scientific curiosity as I might share. And that is the learning that we need to establish for ourselves. Because in the end, these are the people you have to work with. They are the ones who are your customers. So you have to align with them one way or another. You have to wear the a hat of a salesman. Otherwise,
Yeah, I completely understand. And also, like, I have found this very interesting and stark difference in terms of working across different geographies is that being in the US, you're closer to the business, right? You work very closely hand in hand with a product organization. You work hand in hand with other parts of the engineering organization. So I think the overall requirements gets translated in a more meaningful manner. You get to engage with the stakeholders in a more meaningful manner, and you're able to deliver and ship
yeah,
more quickly because the barrier that would exist in terms of time zone differences, etc., would not exist because you're able to quickly be in that particular same room and then have those clarifications. They can work on those specific mandates in a collective manner. That helps in terms of expediting, but there is different charm
yeah,
working on the data science domain across like different geographies, right? Everything has its own pros and cons. The domain in itself is evolving at a lightning speed, right? Whatever was relevant yesterday is not relevant today, and whatever is relevant today may not be relevant tomorrow. So in such changing and evolving domain, how do you maintain your resilience and how do you face and overcome these challenges? Working as a data scientist, as you mentioned, sometimes you gallop with some of the people related challenges and challenges around adoption of AI capabilities.
I don't handle it well. I bawl. I get crazy. Just
Now
talk
we
to
are
my
talking about
therapist.
actual stories from the real people uh, behind algorithms. Awesome. Tell me more.
But recently, I read this somewhere. If you always set your goal as learning and experience as opposed to achieving whatever you set out to achieve, you will never fail. So the concept is that if the idea is that no matter the setback, no matter how it went, I just want to draw some learning. And if that is my goal, essentially, I'm never going to fail because no matter what happens, there's almost always some learning. For instance, a setback could be in the form of a product roadblock, or somebody says that, hey, your model doesn't work. I don't want it. Or
Yeah.
there's some business alignment. Or your favorite leader leaves the team and you can't get over it. But no matter what it is, there's a learning. The learning could be that, hey, these are not my people. And
Yeah.
I just have to leave the room. Or the learning could be that, no, I need to pivot, I need to push. Or it could be the fact that, hey, the tech is not ready or the people are not ready and it's not the right time. I need to wait. Whatever that is, as long as the objective is to learn and to gain something from it, as opposed to getting the point across, that's one way to maintain positivity. Having said that, I do believe, especially the younger folks in the industry who do not have to be all the wiser just yet, it helps to have a little bit of toxic positivity and that undying can do attitude that no matter what, I'm going to push, push, push until I see the cliff. But as we go into the leadership realm, I think that's where it becomes important to have that mental optimization that, is this the battle I'm going to fight today, or am I going to let go and just let the ball roll?
Awesome. So when you spoke about that, right, the toxic optimism or positivity of the younger generation, I think that's really interesting because there should be some sort of a healthy tension, especially when you're working on some of the innovative projects, right? So that reminds me, there have been multiple instances where I felt like, okay, this is a huge challenge. It could be a failure, but in the hindsight, I realized that it was a great growth opportunity, right? So I wanted to understand from your perspective, have there been such a certain instances where you have experienced certain setbacks or failures that over a period of time you realized was a great learning and growth opportunity and you emerged stronger out of that particular situation?
I don't know about stronger, but setbacks every day, every day. And as much as I want to believe in toxic positivity, and I do, the toxicity of it certainly creeps in and it gets difficult. But like I said, right? So, one thing that I try to keep in mind is, am I learning something from it? It could be in terms of knowledge, it could be in terms of my own personal growth, or it could be just realization. As long as one of these three buckets are kicked in, I remind myself every day that it's important for us to understand how long am I going to stick no matter the level of the thing hit the fan, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
uh, and yeah, of course, because right now, especially, everybody does AI, right?
yeah,
It's no longer a science. It's
mm,
a product.
yeah,
It's a revolution, right? I am seeing people very positively so, who do not necessarily have the background in AI, but they are writing white papers. They are researching.
yeah,
So sometimes it can feel a little claustrophobic because now everybody is having an opinion about AI, and sometimes it's difficult to counter. And going back to the people aspect of it, you can't just walk into a room and say that, "Oh, what is going on? That's not how it's done." You can't just say that, right? So you have to, slow yourself down, understand people's perspective. And there is this constant, ticking of the clock to get ahead, to get this done, to get this out the door. Competition has been, I have not seen as fierce a competition as now in the industry in my 8 years. Everything needs to happen yesterday. So, of course, all of that is there. But the only thing that keeps me sane is knowing that the dust is eventually going to settle. And while this crazy storm is happening, we need to do our best to remain authentic to ourselves. This is a crazy heap of innovation and emotions that's running through all of our veins right now. But eventually it's going to settle. And when the dust settles, it's going to be a new world. I try my best to go back to the basics and understand this new world at its root so that when the dust settles, I can be better prepared for the new ways of living.
awesome. So when we talk about like new ways of living and talking about the futuristic aspects, right? I'd like to understand what's your fondest hope for the future of AI where ethics is embedded in everything that we're doing, not only in terms of having an ethical outcome, but in terms of the overall data science value chain, right? Starting from
Yeah, yeah.
embedding ethics and how do we select the data sources to like, how do we build the models to how do we deploy and drive the right kind of outcomes for the business, for the society in large. But also I would love to understand like, what do you think are some of the interesting developments or the futuristic developments that would unfold you feel extremely intrigued about?
A lot to say about it. I have been waiting for you to ask that question. Firstly, I think it's a terrific time to be in AI. I don't think anybody will doubt that. I want to talk a little bit about how I anticipate the role of data science to change when the dust settles.
Yeah.
So I have a little bit of a graphical representation for you in that, and I'm just going to talk through. Um, Before AI, the way that the state of the art systems would all be workflow oriented, right? So it will be an automated pipeline of work. Let's take an example of, say, your objective, suppose, is churn prediction, right? So what are the different steps you do for churn prediction? You get the data, you build your features, you do feature engineering, you choose the model, evaluate, retrain pipeline. So each of these tasks that I'm explaining, if I have to embed this in a graph, we can look at it as the nodes of the graph, right? And then the workflow direction that, hey, first data, then data engineering, then building features, then feature selection, then model selection, blah, blah, blah. These arrows are your edges, what connects the nodes. So far, all of us in the data science world, and even today, are working on making the nodes perfect. So we build the nodes. But the direction or the connection, these are non-stochastic. These are deterministic. I don't let the workflow choose which node to choose after another. But each of the nodes that you're seeing, as we do more and more, imagine the prehistoric data scientists, imagine the time that they would spend on data gathering and EDAs and feature engineering. Now it's so much easier. You basically have embeddings that is kind of like a one-stop shop for feature engineering, right? Even the models, as more and more people use it, they are getting more and more generalized. So for instance, today, NBA, right? It's very innovative. You hand build NDA, you customize NBA. But there will come a time where NBA is so integrated into the retail ecosystem that you won't necessarily need people with 10 years of experience designing NBA. It is something that a junior data scientist can do. So basically, the nodes are going to gradually saturate in terms of innovation, and which was inevitable, irrespective of whether agentic AI came in or not. But what excites me is now that the nodes are eventually going to saturate, the job is not going to learn the nodes, but the edges. You now train your model to be a connectionist system. The edges, which were previously non-stochastic, will now be modeled. So I think in the future, the fundamental definition of a data scientist is going to be more of an architect and how to train your machine to be an architect as opposed to being an executor that we are today. Of course, it's going to be a balance, but mathematically, I think the fundamental definition of machine learning is going to change in what we are making the machine learn.
Awesome.
Now, on the ethical AI aspect of it, right? My views here are influenced by the recent keynote that I heard in New Rips. Ethical AI today, it's governed by the builders or the developer, the custodians of AI. We ensure that my data is not is biased, which in most of the cases it is. My model does not project the same bias as my data, as my history, right? So it's very contained in the tech, right?
Yeah.
But as AI is not really contained in my laptop anymore, it's running nodes, I think ethical AI will too. And it's going to be as much about the user as the builder.
Yeah.
This is something that I'm quoting from Zeynep Tufekci, who in her keynote, it's called, Are We Having the Right Nightmares About AI? She goes on to explain that when a transformational technology arrives in the world, we humans have barely done a good job of identifying how it will evolve in the massive use cases.
Yeah.
She used the example of printing press. When printing press first came in, then rich and powerful, they used the printing press to popularize a version of the Bible that they thought will benefit them. Now, printing press was expensive, was niche, so it was not everybody could abuse that. They could, and they did. But then over time, when printing press drove out of its boundaries, became accessible, became cheap, then the same printing press was now being used by liberals to spread a version of the Bible that they thought that would benefit them, which was
Yeah.
opposite of the church back then. Right? Same with AI. So as of now, there's so much work on trying to identify what AI can do. But the acceleration of the growth that we are pursuing, which is we must, I don't think there's any going back. But that is going to give rise to a very different set of use cases in AI that we are unable to anticipate. And where her concern was is that the AI of today are connectionists, can learn edges, not the ones that science fiction of like not the one that you see in Westworld. It's different. It's stronger. And most importantly, they emulate human intelligence. So what that means is they talk in I pronouns. They don't remind you that they are an artificial source of intelligence. So what happens is it's very difficult for us as humans to not trust someone who talks like humans. You almost can't tell that ChatGPT is not human, but it is not human. And AI intelligence is actually not like human intelligence. And the example she gave was of Cipher 2 versus Cipher 13. So Cipher 2 is the use case where you're given a letter and you are asked to predict the third letter after it. But Cipher 13 would be the 14th letter after it. So for you and I, Srujana, Cipher 2 is easy. Cipher 13 is not so much.
Yeah.
For ChatGPT, Cipher 13 is actually easier because there are more recorded examples in the world of Cipher 13 than Cipher 2. And ChatGPT learns from data. It
Sure.
cannot think like us, right? So her point was that while the gross AIification of everything is inevitable and it is a transformational piece of technology and we shouldn't bound it, we also need to understand or decode the nature of this alien intelligence. There's so much work that's been done on ensuring that AI is accurate, that AI is scalable, that AI can be used everywhere, but not enough to understand where AI can go wrong, because unless we really understand the nature of this alien intelligence, we won't be able to set up the right guardrails. And while government policies will come in eventually, but if tech is not ready with those guardrails, it will go through the same issues that privacy is going through now. Like there's so much policy, but I mean, how often do you actually read the terms and agreement that a particular app shows you? Ethical AI must evolve from the builder domain to also the user domain, where it's important to, educate someone like the person who's bringing you coffee or your babysitter who doesn't really, she's a 13-year-old woman. She doesn't care to go through all the terms and conditions, but it's important to teach her how to use AI because AI is coming for her one way or another. And there are going to be abusers one way or another. And we need to be ready for it.
Yeah. One of the things that you said highly resonated with me is today, these AI agents and chatbots, especially because they are now enabled with the voice modality, they are able to engage with us in a fluid and multi-turn conversation. It's becoming extremely difficult to distinguish whether I'm talking to a chatbot versus a real human.
Yeah.
Those, because an AI is getting better and they are able to engage with us, and also because we're training these chatbots on empathy and human connotation and perception, etc. So I think overarchingly it's going to become extremely difficult, and we need to make sure that we are not necessarily playing a catch-up game in terms of regulatory policies and guardrails, rather than be more proactive and leverage AI to come up with more nuanced understanding of how to prevent
Yes.
AI from
Exactly.
dominating humans,
Exactly.
right? So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
only way to go about that, right? In
Yeah.
terms of
Yeah.
catching up with how things are progressing.
What you're talking about is proof of human authenticity. Like
Yeah.
tomorrow, if an AI calls you with the same voice of your daughter and say that,
Yeah.
Mom, send me this amount of money.
So this is my last question, but a very interesting and personal favorite as well. So can you tell me any non-work usage of AI, that you cannot live without in your day-to-day life?
I think I text my therapist a lot less now.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, I know, you can give some really sane advice.
But one of the things that intrigues me a lot is intrigues and also scares me a bit is the way AI is being used in art. So, say there are, I don't know if you've seen any, but there are now plays entirely written and directed by AI. And it's a field these days. Like people go to, and of course it's evolving. Now, the good thing is, I mean, it's a new form of art. Come on, it's crazy. It's very interesting to see how it thinks, and you can make it as surreal as you want.
Yeah.
But also, what concerns me is some of these written content by AI or art by AI seems so human that I keep wondering that will there be a time where human art is actually rare? So it's maybe the normal people like us. Maybe when you open Netflix, everything will be AI generated, and you have to pay extra to view human generated content, and it could be a niche that only the rich and powerful can afford. That's
Yeah.
my fear, but at the same time I'm so excited the way
This
AI
is
is being
this is
treated in the
super
creative.
interesting. I recently visited MoMA, which is like in a museum of modern art in San Francisco, and I saw a lot of like AI generated images, but they were very vibrant, right? Like extremely splendid. I was mesmerized. So I don't mind whether it's human generated or AI generated as long as I get to enjoy the beauty. But people can have different perspectives. But I also understand that, of course, like an AI can produce whatever is currently out there, right? So based on the patterns, whatever currently exists. But there is also something called as the sixth dimension, right? Which is not necessarily manifested in a physical form. Only humans have the potential to absorb that sixth dimension and bring it to the physical form. I think like that's the uniqueness that humans would always maintain despite AI taking over the world, right?
Hands
Also,
down.
so this has been great, Debanjana. Thank you so much for your time. I had a great time chatting with you. I'm sure like our listeners would enjoy listening to this podcast and would definitely learn a lot from your perspectives. Thank you so much for spending your time and talking to us today. Take care.
Thank you so much, Regina. It was wonderful talking to you today.
Thank you. Bye.